Spring training is well underway, and we're just days away from fake opening day as the LA Dodgers and Arizona Diamondbacks are going to square off in Sydney, Australia on March 22nd and 23rd. Why? Well, near as I can tell, it's to mess with the majority of the fantasy baseball population that's going to be holding its auctions that weekend. They're going to play 2 games down under, then come back to the States to finish up the 3-game set in San Diego, playing Sunday night, March 30th. Then we've got the traditional opening day on Monday, March 31st. And that's where we try to pretend that the first 3 games didn't happen. Bud Selig clearly doesn't play fantasy baseball. Hey, we've got a curious bunch of viewers here as my Twitter thingy is starting to fill up. So let's get right to it, and I'll get through a bunch of these questions as quick as I can. Now, for the sake of brevity, I am not going to read out your Twitter handles. Why? Well, A, I can't pronounce most of them, and 2, you really don't want other people in your league knowing that you're asking me these things anyway, do you? Didn't think so. All right, first up, Mike, what are your thoughts on Neftali Feliz? Is he safe to draft? Well, this weekend he was clocked in the 91 to 93 mile an hour range consistently, and he hit 95 on the gun once. Now, if he's able to keep up his velocity to that level, he'll be an effective closer for sure. You've got a few more weeks to monitor this and keep an eye on it because Joakim Soria, a former all-star closer in his own right, coming back from Tommy John, is right on his tail. Now, if these 2 guys are right, they can be deadly in the 8th and 9th inning together. It would not shock me if Soria saw some save chances of his own during the season, as I think that both of these relievers are going to be getting some regularly scheduled days off as manager Ron Washington tried to get them both through the entire regular season healthy for a run at the playoffs. Mike, are you concerned at all with Zach Greinke's calf injury, and are you dropping him on your draft boards? No, not at all. When was the last time you saw a pitcher throw the ball with his calf? He's getting some rest. He's going to be fine. Mike, do you think that Carlos Santana moving to third base will give his numbers a boost? Hey, logic will tell you that his counting numbers will have an uptick, right? Should get more at-bats. But I'm more skeptical than most here. I've seen too many instances of catchers trying to move to other positions where it then affects their hitting. Now, Paul Hoynes of the Cleveland Plain Dealer wrote last week that he looks like a catcher trying to play third base. It's not good. Now, hopefully for fantasy owners, he gets most of his time at DH and only gets spot starts at third and first. He already qualifies at catcher and first, so if he now adds third base to that, he becomes pretty attractive, giving you lots of flexibility. Now, while he may prove to be extremely useful, I'm not as high on him as most, and his 2011 season is probably his upside. I'm always concerned with Santana's batting average, and if he does get more at-bats, that's something that's likely to hurt you, not help. Mike, I saw where you had some negative things to say about Cleveland Indians starter Danny Salazar. WTF, he is awesome. No, not true. I love that kid. I think in terms of his stuff, he's a top 20 talent. He's now 4 years removed from Tommy John, and he's got filthy stuff. All I did was suggest some caution with regard to his draft position. As I told Ray Flowers last week, anyone who thinks that this kid's going to throw 200 innings, they're on meth. He tossed 145 combined innings last season between the minors and the majors, and teams just don't let pitchers jump more than 30 innings or so in cases like this. So my point is if he's not going to pitch as much as some expect, then his numbers won't help you as much as some expect. Great talent though. Mike, if you had to pick one player who can put up a huge year that doesn't already have a track record, who would that be? Well, that depends on what you view as being a huge year. But to me, Nationals catcher Wilson Ramos is a huge wild card here, and it's really only his ability to remain healthy that remains a question for me. After watching him play last season, hitting .272 with 16 home runs, driving in 59 in just 287 at-bats, he's someone that if he can stay in the lineup consistently, I think can alter the landscape in the catcher category. He'll probably start out batting 7th in the lineup, but don't be surprised if he starts to creep up as the season goes on, assuming he can remain healthy. Matt Harvey announced on Twitter on Saturday that Harvey Day will happen sometime in 2014, suggesting that he's going to pitch this season. Where would you draft him? I'd take him late in the keeper league if the situation was right, but I don't really see him having any fantasy value for this season. Mike, what do you think of Chris Carter? Hey look, there's some good here and there's some bad. He's going to be the Astros DH. Still can't get used to that team being the American League, but it is what it is. He qualifies at both first base and the outfield, and he's likely to hit you a ton of home runs. I've got him penciled in for about 35. The problem is because the team he plays on is so offensively challenged, his RBI totals are not likely to be what you expect from a player that hits that many home runs. And there's no one to drive him in when he does get on base, so his runs scored isn't likely to be a major contributor to that category either. As for his batting average, hey, it is what it is. He strikes out a ton and he's not going to hit for a good average. Carter is one of those players that will work for rosters set up well with batting average, speed, and runs scored who need some pop. So, depending on the composition of your roster, he's either going to have some value for you, or he probably won't be rosterable. What do you think of the Mets' crowded outfield situation, and who is the odd man out? Well, it's not going to be Curtis Granderson, that's for sure. And my money is on Juan Lagares being the everyday center fielder, even if it's not to begin the season. You watch that kid play defense, and he's like watching Andrew Jones when he first came up. He gets to the balls that other people just can't get to. And if he can simply hit enough, his defensive skills are just too valuable from a baseball standpoint not to run him out there every day. The problem, of course, is he doesn't look to be fantasy relevant at the moment. So that leaves the two Youngs, Eric and Chris, in some sort of a platoon over the long term, which is probably a bummer for those of you planning on getting a ton of cheap stolen bases from Eric Young, because if Lagares ends up in center field, Young is not likely to get the amount of bats over the course of the full season that you would want him to get for stolen base totals to accumulate. Mike, should I hold on to Emilio Bonifacio in a mixed 5x5 league for $2? Hey look, Bonifacio really doesn't have a position, but he's going to be a jack of all trades leading off when he is in the lineup. He qualifies at both second base and outfield, and he'll play both those positions and may qualify at third base at some point during the season as well. Now, the Cubbies are going to have to generate some offense from somewhere, and if Bonifacio gets 450 at-bats, hits 260, steals 30 bases for you, and scores 60 runs, that's definitely worth a deuce. Mike, is there a pitcher out there that you think is a sleeper this season? Well, for the second year in a row, I love Julio Teheran. I'm out here pounding the table again. He currently has an ADP of 123, and he's the 30th starting pitcher coming off the boards. Now, I'm on record as having had him as one of my Rookie of the Year candidates prior to last season, and while that didn't happen, he was pretty darn good. 185 innings pitched, 170 strikeouts, a 1.19 whip, and an ERA of 3.20. Not too shabby. Now, I expect him to reach the 200 inning plateau this season with close to 200 strikeouts, and his other metrics speak for themselves. So if you can get him as the 30th pitcher off the boards, I think you'll have done pretty well. Well, that's all for this segment, folks. Keep those Twitter questions coming, and if I can't fit your question into the next segment, I'll hit reply and I'll get back to you that way. Bonifacio, $2.